I am beating every N64 game, and I mean all of them. The twist is, the next game I play is randomly selected, so I have no clue what's coming next. This is the journey to beating every N64 game. Game number 64, Robotron 64. Released in 1998, this game was developed by Player One and published by Crave Entertainment. When I was looking at some of the games I'd never played on the N64, this one really stuck out to me as potential trouble for this challenge. The original Robotron 2084 on the arcade was ported to the Xbox Live Arcade back in the day, and I used to love hunting for achievements. There was an achievement on that game to beat Wave 100, and it was one of the hardest on the entire console, so I was a bit worried this game may be just as difficult to beat. Still, I know that Robotron's a beloved classic from the arcade era, so I was pretty excited to try this one out. There's a single player arcade mode, so we'll be completing that to beat this game. The way this game plays is it's an 8-directional shooter. You move with the joystick and shoot with the C buttons. You can actually do a 2-stick control scheme by plugging in a second N64 controller, which I did. Honestly, I didn't like it quite as much. I just felt like I had more control with the C buttons. The goal of a level is to kill all the enemies on screen. There's certain things that don't need to be killed though, like the big green robots, they can't be blown up. Along with that, you can touch the walking people to save them and gain a lot of bonus points. You obtain a 1-up for every 50,000 points, and trust me, you're going to need them. As you can see, between each level it shows your character floating through a rainbow colored space. Honestly, this game is quite the trip. The music's very fast-paced techno music, and it just gets wilder and wilder the further you get into the game. The early levels start out really easy, but I knew it was going to get much harder. Eventually, I reached a bonus round at level 20. This sends enemies at you in various patterns, and it's a completely safe level. Kinda reminds me of the bonus stages in Galaga. In later waves, these bonus rounds provide a huge sense of relief. Eventually, I did start having some deaths past level 30. When you die, you immediately respawn, and all the enemies you've killed so far stay dead, which that's nice. As you can probably tell, the levels are getting harder much faster. I had thought this was a game that never ended, but it turns out there is a final level in this one. We'll wait to find out how far it goes. Another thing that happens rarely is you can pick up power-ups. There aren't too many of them. One causes your shots to fire in 2 directions at once, which is really cool. Then there's another that gives you invincibility, and there's a pair of shoes that make you run faster. It's worth it to grab these every time they appear. Along with the levels having more enemies in general and being more chaotic the further in you get, the game does a good job introducing brand new types of enemies every 10 levels. So like at level 41, there began to be these electric poles that create walls to kill you if you touch them. You don't have to blow up the poles to beat the level, thankfully. And there's now these pink brain enemies that take several shots to kill and send out homing missiles every so often. The tankier enemies are definitely one of the biggest problems to deal with in the game, in my opinion. Not only does the type of enemies change every 10 levels, the environment does as well. So at level 50, it's now this chessboard type floor, and the colors in the background change. It does a good job keeping things feeling fresh, since in the end, the actual gameplay is the same in every level. With the levels getting harder, I'd be getting destroyed if I didn't have prior experience. I used to play this game called Geometry Wars, and I was pretty good at it. It's very similar to this one. A very good strategy to do is move in circles around the map and kite the enemies backwards. This does a good job to funnel the enemies in a single pile behind you. Occasionally, you'll need to kill something in front of you, which is fine. As long as you're constantly moving, you have the best chance of survival. At wave 61, I got a new power-up, the flamethrower. It attacks in short range, but with very high damage. It's the only realistic way to take out these green brain enemies. Otherwise, you're going to be shooting at them for quite a while to kill them, which it's awful when they're combined with other enemies. And in level 63, it introduces mines, which they kinda suck. The only way to destroy them is have an enemy run over them or use the flamethrower. They essentially just are there to limit your available movement space until the enemies blow them up. Around the 70s, I started to see these white lights pop up occasionally. I was afraid to touch them, but eventually I did, and I'm glad that I did. They're warps, and they let you completely skip multiple levels. These are crucial for reaching the end without running out of lives. Another frustrating enemy later on are these rings. There are different tiers of them that take longer to kill. The thing that makes them suck so much is they constantly spawn enemies until you've destroyed them. With the invulnerable robots blocking the way, this can sometimes be really tough to do. After an hour and a half of playing, I had made it to the end. The level was even called the final battle. It just throws a smorgasbord of every kind of enemy at you. It's just so chaotic. Compared to level 1, it's like a night and day difference. Then it was time for level 100. This turned out to actually be a boss stage, which I thought was really cool. It's this big creepy bug dude who sends out tons of red fire orbs to kill you and blue orbs to slow you down. It's pretty generous with the flamethrower power-ups though, which melt through its HP. Every so often during the fight it spawns hordes of enemies to just further add to the madness. Eventually I brought its HP down enough to kill all of its legs, then it just kinda crawls around the room, not being much of a threat. When you beat it, it shows your character floating in something, no clue what it is. Then level 101 starts. It says the war continues. It turns out this game actually has 200 levels in total, and oh man, those last 100 levels were nothing compared to some of these. It's a bit deceiving because level 101 is really easy compared to 99, but it's also much harder than level 1 was. Now what I think is the worst enemy in the whole game is introduced, the blue ring. This takes quite a few shots to kill and it moves around very rapidly and spawns new enemies until it's dead. When there's a lot of these on screen, good luck. Anyway, it was just pretty smooth sailing for the first part of these next 100 waves. So by this point I was up to level 160 and the waves started getting much harder, as well as just with far more enemies in general. It was around here that I realized you can abuse the controls to fire more bullets than are intended. If I held one C button and mashed an adjacent one fast enough to keep up with the automatic rate of fire, I could effectively double my output. This would help out so much in the later waves as there was just too many enemies to handle with a single stream of bullets. Around level 164 I got really lucky, or maybe not. I don't actually know if these are random, but there were warps in 2 consecutive levels, which was awesome. Being able to skip any level this far in is just massive. Then at level 171 I found a warp that sent me ahead by 5 levels, which that's insane. Almost as insane as the amount of enemies I was having to deal with in the one it sent me to. It was over 3.5 hours in and I made it to level 180, the final bonus level of the entire game. It felt nice to get a break from the madness, even if only for a minute or so. Did you know this game has a story? We're playing as a scientist who found himself in an alternate dimension where robots are destroying all of humanity. His goal is to kill the robots and save the last remaining human family, being the guy in the suit, the woman in the dress, the child with the hat, and of course the old man with the cane. The game was so absurd by this point that the devs were just self-aware with the names of the levels. Level 186 is just called Keep Fighting. They know you're exhausted by this point, and level 198 is just called Give Up. Who would want to stop this close to the end? Finally though, after well over 4 hours, I was at wave 199. They just dumped hundreds, if not thousands, of every type of enemy in the game in this one. It's like a Mario Maker enemy spam level essentially. This single wave lasted well over 3 minutes, which is quite nuts, but I did get through it. It was time for the end. The final level is called You Deserve the Blue Guardian. It's a boss fight just like level 100, but it's blue this time. It sends out way more projectiles and there's significantly more enemies running around while you deal with the boss itself. Honestly though, outside of it being more powerful, it's the same as the first boss fight. When you beat it, it shows the last human family and says thanks to your superpowers, the last human family will live to see the year 2085. Then the credits roll. Game complete. So yeah, there you have it, my journey to beating Robotron 64. I knew very little about this one going in, other than the original version was very difficult. And honestly, I was pretty pleasantly surprised with this game. I really enjoyed it. The graphics are kind of bad, and it does lag a bit, but outside of that, it's fantastic. The music is just nuts, but it fits this type of game very well. The controls are really smooth, and like, come on, 200 levels are a lot. If you're an arcade enthusiast who likes going for high scores, you'd probably really enjoy this game. Definitely recommend it. I gave it an 8 out of 10 for enjoyability and a 5.5 out of 10 for difficulty. Hey, thanks for watching the video. Have a sneak peek at the next game. So there's 327 games on the list. Could be any of them. Let's see what we get. 3, 2, 1, go. 247? What's that? Oh man. We're playing Razor Freestyle Scooter. I bet this is gonna be sick. But yeah, if you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like. It helps the channel a lot. And if you like this series, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next one.